Hi everyone, welcome back. Diane here. If you're new to my studio, this is where 3 times a week we paint something interesting, easy and fun. So let's get started. Here I have my last palette from what I was doing yesterday, and I'm going to use this as a starting point for today. So I'll just put that to one side for a second while I talk about the rest of the materials. I'm going to be using a 9x12 sheet of Meeden watercolor paper, 100% cotton. This is the rough surface, which actually isn't really all that rough. Some hot press paper is at least as not rough as this, so it's not scary. So if you haven't used rough before, or indeed come to that if you haven't used hot pressed before, the Meeden one is a good way to start because it's very, very moderate in its roughness. I'm using a large Craftmo brush. This is a 14 round. It could be any brush. This happens to be one of my collaborative sets with Craftmo. But if you don't have that, don't panic. You are not, all is not lost. So I'm going to go to this palette here. And what I want to do is mix up a little bit of neutral grey. So I'm just pushing together different colours that I have on here, adding a fair amount of water, and making a very, very loose, very neutral. I'll add a bit of grey, purple there to make it into more of a grey. And then what I'm planning to do with that is just breaking the surface of the paper. Because often when you're doing a painting like this, which is intended to cover the whole sheet, you don't really know quite where to start. So one way, and oil painters do this all the time, is to just paint in a sort of underpainting, which has got really absolutely nothing to do with the painting that's going to go on top. But it just gives you some, basically for this one, it'll give you some shadows to go behind your flowers. And this grey, being a very neutral grey, is not going to, I'm just trying to get rid of a cat hair there, or it might even be one of mine. It's not going to affect what you put on top at all. It's just going to give you, basically, it's like unlocking the door to your creativity. So I've left lots of white space. I've just kind of broken the surface there, and Bob's your uncle. We can get started in a minute. So that's this palette now has served its purpose for the time being. It might come in handy again later, but for now, you can go and sit over there and be quiet in the corner. And we'll just let this dry. So that's dry now. So for this painting, I'm going to be using my Kuretake 48 set, which is here. And you can see all the colours there just about. I have taken my paints out of the box in which they come because I prefer to have them arranged like this with a mixing area in the middle. This is the way I have always painted, with my paints around the outside edge of a big palette, mixing in the middle or on a separate palette if I run out of space here. And I have them organised in a kind of logical way. So going from, I've got one missing actually, ultramarine pale belongs in there. These paints are a sort of compromise between watercolour and gouache, has to be said. And they have much more intense colour than most watercolours, and you can achieve results that up until now you could only, well, for us in the West anyway, you could only achieve with gouache. And of course, gouache is matte. It's not at all shiny. This has got a completely different quality and tends to reflect light a bit better, so that's nice. Anyway, so I arrange my colours going from lightest blue through all the blues, and then the browns going down to red, through to orange and yellow, from yellow to green. And that's more or less, I mean, you could play around with that order and change it. It's not carved in stone, but that's the way I have it. And I'm going to do a painting today, which is a very loose floral, and we'll see what happens, but it'll probably be something in a style that I haven't necessarily done before. I've been looking at a few other artists' work lately. Sorry, just having a quick slurp of coffee. And you know how it is. A little bit of inspiration never goes amiss. I'm thinking I might need to move that over there and put the paints over this side. because otherwise I'm being right-handed. I'm going to drip paint onto my precious art. Today's one of those days where I just wanted to get started and I haven't really tied it up. So let's put that like that. Can we see? Yes, we can see. Now, I sprayed my paints before I began, so they should be reasonably soft. I need my towel here to wipe off my brush on, and my water should be here, I think, out of the way. I don't want to drip it everywhere. So now we have a kind of broken grey background onto which we can start with our flowers. And I'm going to be bold and start with pink. And yes, so let me see. This is a pinkish colour. This is a red colour. The idea is to paint on the big side. So that's why I'm using a very big brush, this one. And I'm going to use basically quite a lot of paint. And we'll paint these more or less, what would you call them? Semi-abstract, do you think? Do you think we could call them semi-abstract? If we put a little bit of blue in there, we'll get a kind of more of a pink colour. So I'll put another one over here, pinky mauve. And then wiping off my brush to get some of the paint off before I wash it. And then let's go for some yellow in the middle. Nice big yellow flower. And then we'll put another one over here. And maybe one down here. This is what happens when you mix yellow with purple. You get a sort of brown, but that's okay. And then I'm going to put in a vase, and I think I'm going to do it in orange, sort of orangey red colour. And it's going to be here. So I just paint that in, keeping it nice and rough. So there we are, that's that. And then we've got all these big flowers, and we can put a few more smaller ones in, let's say, and we're going to join them all up in a minute. Let's go back to the red, pinkish red. I'll put one over here. And let's have one here. And I'm going to add another brighter red to these. Now they've started to dry, so that we've got two colours blending on the paper. Like that. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take a tissue and I'm going to lighten the back of these flowers. This is the best way of making them lighter. Just press with it's not kitchen towel, this is a tissue, blowing your nose on when you've got a cold. We just lift out here like that, and you get some texture. and have some fun. They look more real because they're not just blobs of paint put down. So, and then when they're dry, we can come back and enhance them a bit. We want them a little bit darker in places. Okay, that's much better. Then I'm going to start with the greens, and for that I'm going to pop this palette on top of my Kuretake one because I've got some nice greens here, and I can add Kuretake colour from here. Okay, so we've got a sort of nice deep mixed sap green dark, I think that one's called. So let's start. Whoops, that wasn't what I meant to do. Oh dear. That wasn't what I meant to do at all. I'll start by putting in some stems. For the flowers. And then let's add a bit of yellow. And just relax and just paint leaves. Anywhere you want. And if you paint nice dark ones, you can cover up any mistakes that you make. And then you find suddenly you've actually improved the whole thing. Little leaves like that are always good. And oh yes, I know what I wanted to do. I'm going to just quickly swap to a slightly smaller brush. And I was going to pick up some grey if I can find it. And pop in a few grey flowers. Okay, and then we need to think about these petals here. So I'll just mix some yellow with some orange, give them a bit more structure, like that. And this one I didn't dab out, did I? So if you forgot to do that, then just wet it and you can dab it again. And now I think I need to do something with the... Oh, I don't know about that. I think dark green would probably, maybe turquoise. Just do some shapes on here. And maybe some reddish. Try to make it nice and bold. And now we need to let that dry a bit. Meanwhile, we can go back to our leaves. And then if we do the front part of the flowers in a darker colour than the back, we can come back in and paint over those petals at the front. But we want to vary the colour a little bit. So we need some parts to be very dark and other parts to be quite light. And always have our handy tissue at the ready to do dabbing out when we think it's necessary. And let's put a surface for it to stand on, and then I think we need some more grey. So I do have a little pot of grey here. So I have grey with a little bit of blue in it. And then we can put and now I'm going to try to fill in a lot of the gaps with grey. Sometimes really quite light and other times a little bit darker. Oh yeah, that pot looks a lot better now. Just lift out a bit of it there. Okay, so now I think I need to dry it again. Okay, so we now have this dry, and I'm thinking probably need to add a few more leaves, dark ones, and to put some veins in some of the ones that I've already got on here. So I'm just looking for maybe something resembling blackish green for some of these. Highlights. low lights. Perhaps not quite so black. Sometimes just adding a few veins really, I don't know, just kind of brings out the whole thing a bit. And sometimes you just need to just do some flicks like that. Doesn't really mean anything. This is where you slow down. I do find that I tend to hurry at the beginning stages of a painting, but then as I go through it, I start to slow down a bit. I expect probably you're the same. And I want some grey mixed with that to give me a greyish green. I'm going to put some more leaves up here. And some veins on these ones that aren't too dark. And maybe we need some straggly lines coming through. Sort of filling in the gaps. If you make the flowers, your initial flowers, really big, like these ones, then I think it's easier to build up a painting design around it. You have to be quite brave and just put in huge splodges of colour, but the idea of lifting out some of the paint after you've put it in, I think really helps. And don't be downhearted when you go partway through and suddenly you think, this isn't working, because it's working the way it's meant to work. And the inspiration will come if you just let it. And these Kuretake colours are very forgiving. They are. Let me see. Do I want another squiggly thing somewhere? Don't want too many squiggly things. I think we're probably getting towards the end of the possibilities for this one. Quite like the way the pot turned out. And you could put a bit more grey in the background there if you wanted to. I've just noticed that I've made a mess there, so you can just pick up some clean water on your brush and dampen it if you've made a bit of a boo-boo, and then you can lift it off and it's gone. So there we are. I think, shall we just put a little bit more brown in the middle of that flower? And this one says, yes, and I'd like a little bit of black inside me. And I don't know whether these flowers need stamens or something like that coming out. They might do. And maybe a tiny bit more sort of browny yellow here in some of those. I think I'm going to say that that's good enough. And you remember we started with grey for the shadowy background, and you can't see it at all. It didn't affect anything in the colours of the flowers. it just helped me to relax and be liberated in what I painted. So there we are, that's done. And thanks to, who is it, Suzanne Allard, whose painting I've been watching today, and this is inspired by her. So I'd like to say thank you to Suzanne for giving me a few moments of freedom in my painting, which I've been able to share with you. Go over to Suzanne's Facebook page or YouTube channel, and you'll find lots more like this over there. And I think you'll enjoy her style and her presentation. She's got lots of courses and all sorts of things. She's a great artist who's self-taught, I believe, from scratch in fairly recent years. So yeah, Suzanne Allard. I'll put a link in the description below. And as I say, she's the one who inspired. I don't know Suzanne, but she seems like a lovely lady. And yeah, go and discover her and enjoy some of her art as well as mine. Okay, so I'll let you go, and I'll see you again soon, everybody. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.